Hello, my name is Bhagwan Chaudhary. I am a professor of finance at the Indian School of Business, ISB. Today, I'm having a conversation with my colleague, Professor Prasanna Tantri, who is also a professor of finance at ISB. A large part of Indian workforce is in the informal sector. Prasanna, tell us what consists of the informal sector?
First of all, thanks, Professor Bhagwan, for having me on your show. So informal sector is loosely defined as all those people who are working in either small firms which are not regulated, or those who run their own self-employed kind of shops, kind of businesses, and a large chunk of them are agricultural, landless agricultural labor. This is sort of a big chunk of informal labor in India. They don't operate under kind of a formal regulated firm that most of us work in.
Okay.
And this constitutes like a big chunk, out of 500 million workforce in India. There is no credible estimate, anything from 60% to 80%. Sometimes it's 90%.
So it could be as large as 80%, which is a big part of the labor force.
Yeah.
Now, of course, there are advantages of being part of the informal workforce in terms of costs. So firms like it because it gives them flexibility, and it costs them less. Why does it cost them less? What do you think, Prasanna?
The rules and regulations are not stringent. You can hire at will, fire at will. The minimum wage laws don't apply. Working condition rules don't apply. Timing restrictions don't apply. Inspectors will not ask you questions about these guys. So there are a lot of, at least on the face of it, it looks like there are a lot of advantages of having these guys. It gives you flexibility to operate.
It gives flexibility, a lot of flexibility to employers.
Yeah. Yes.
But it is not so great from the point of view of the employee. It also means less protection, less benefits, and less job security in some sense.
Yes. So, but then, the only benefit for the employee is because employees don't have too much bargaining power. These are unskilled labor, and this one advantage is you can find these jobs. Where do you find those formal jobs? So that way it is advantageous. Otherwise, it's disadvantage, and it's also disadvantages from the point of view of the economy. I would like to draw your attention to a famous QJ paper which says that if you take a US firm, 5-year-old versus a 40-year-old firm, the number of people employed is 7 times higher. Whereas in India, it's barely 1.5 to 2 times. So even from an economy point of view, job creation point of view, this is not good, but and also for employees, definitely.
Okay, so 2 points you made. One is that if it weren't for this flexibility and minimum wage and the fact that you have to give no benefits, some of these people may not be employable. So I'm able to offer them a wage, but if I were faced with all these other restrictions, the wage would be even lower, and that would make these things unviable.
Yes, absolutely.
But the second point you're making is, but that puts people in this low level of jobs, which is not so good for the economy to actually grow and build the skills of these people. So the evidence that you mentioned from the paper suggests that economies grow only when firms get bigger and they get people to become more and more skilled.
Yes. Okay. And just one more point, the big problem in India is missing middle. You have large chunk of organizations, firms, which are very small. India has around 5 crore firms. We have like 33 crore households, 5 crore firms. Out of that, 4.5 crore are SMEs. Within this 4.5 crore, some 4 crore are tiny firms. These people employ like 5 people, 2 people, 1 person.
Less than 5 people. Okay.
Yeah, and then you have a large firms, 200, 300 of them, which are truly world class. These guys can go and acquire any multinational in the US. The middle ones, which are really the growth engines of economy, are completely missing in India. And that is where all these regulations and all come into play.
But what if the government could step in and take the burden of some of these costs on itself? to reduce the burden on the employee or the employer?
The government started doing something like that in 2018. This Pradhan Mantri Rozgar Prosahan Yojana, where they would pay 12% of provident employer's contribution, the 12% of salary for people up to 15,000 for about 3 years.
Okay,
This was the
so let
scheme.
me just give a little context here. Right now, employee is supposed to put 12% of your salary, and employer is supposed to contribute 12% for a total of 24%. That goes into the retirement provident fund of the employee. But it's seen as a cost for those who are right at the bottom just beginning, because to give you 10,000 rupees, 2,400 will just go to the contribution of Provident Fund. So I think what you're suggesting is, what if the government says that we will make that payment? Are you saying the entire 24%?
Yes, so I'm saying two things. Again, in line with what we discussed, the scheme that they have, Protsahan Yojana, which is 12%, make it 24% instead of 12%, and extend it to it's restrictive now, 15,000 rupees. 15,000 is quite small given today's price levels. Maybe make it 30,000 rupees salary. And more importantly, and they have done it for this short period of COVID. To be fair, in this Garib Kalyan Yojana, there is a scheme that's for 3 months only, but make extended. But more importantly, one other reason why these employers do not want to hire these workers is that moment I hire more of these formal workers, I will breach this 100, 200 threshold, and then all these laws apply. So you simultaneously, you will also have to liberalize those laws. At least make a rule that those who cross because of hiring these additional workers who are eligible for these benefits, for them these restrictive laws do not apply.
Okay.
Something like that has to be done on that front also. Otherwise, employers will keep hiding. Even if you give 24%, maybe the cost of regulation is so high that employers may still want to keep these workers informed.
Okay, so the Prime Minister's Protsahan Yojana is contributing 12%, but you're saying that's not enough because the other 12% still a cost. Whether it comes
Yes.
from employee's pocket or not doesn't matter. So you're saying make it 24%, and you can
Yes.
limit it. You can say that only up to a certain amount, so the cost to the government is less. And the second point you're making, which I would like to elaborate a little bit more, is that there is this limit. After 100 employees, the laws become more severe in terms of hiring and firing.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, the thought here is that because the employees are a little protected, now they're building a little bit of a fund. Maybe they don't need as much protection, and at the same time, we can also liberalize the labor laws. So that goes in both directions. It will make it easier for employees to accept this as not a restriction, because now I'm building a little fund for myself. Is that what you're thinking?
Absolutely. Otherwise, employers will not come into this scheme because moment they disclose so many formal labor, they would cross the threshold, and then all those laws will apply. I have another finer suggestion. This has been done in the case of priority sector lending. At least make this rule that whoever crosses threshold because of this scheme, because of disclosing more employees under this whatever new scheme which we are proposing, those who cross the threshold for 5 years, let there be a forbearance. For 5 years, they will still operate under old laws as if they are below 100. So that will remove this bottleneck from
so you're saying, let's ease this in. For a 5-year period, you still won't be subject to the tough laws about not hiring and firing. So that removes this restriction about hiring people and not worrying about whether you'll be able to fire them or not.
Yes. And employers then will have no constraint. Otherwise, even if you give money, they will have this constraint that they will cross this threshold because of showing these excess workers or additional workers, and that cost of regulation may be higher than the free gift that government is giving. Now that you remove this, and this 5 years, the reason why I'm saying 5 years, obviously a first best solution is just abolish these things, but they are politically very difficult. We understand.
So you're saying
It's easy to make
politically it
this
may be
decision.
hard to do it,
Yeah,
but
very hard.
start with a
Yeah.
5 year and then see how it goes.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about the cost. How much is this going to cost to the government to be able to
Yeah.
provide 24% in Provident Fund up to a limit of say 15,000? What is going to be the cost to the exchequer?
Yeah, so if you see the Protsahan Yojana, the Pradhan Mantri Rozgar Protsahan Yojana, it has attracted 1 crore of workers. And if you assume that 15,000 rupees is the salary and take the average to be around 10,000, it will be around 1,200. You're paying 1,200. Instead of that, you will be paying 2,400. So right now, I saw the budget figures. Allocation for the scheme was to the tune of around 7,000 odd crores. So now, because if this is advertised and if more people join, if this is pushed, and because now there is demand as well, because people would have lost jobs and so on and so forth. Maybe I don't see a burden of more than, at least in the initial years, 25,000 crores. This is not one. This is not everything will come now. This is an annual payment which the government is going to do, and I think annually, for a budget of 20 lakh crore. Spending, actually our budget now is 30 lakh crore. 20 lakh crore is our revenue. If you spend some 10,000 crore more in a year, I don't see it as a big burden, provided we are also doing other measures which will improve productivity. Because the same QJ study says that if you change Indian laws or reduce frictions, that's the word they use, or go closer to the US, our productivity can go up anywhere between 25 to 50%. This is what they at least
boost to productivity.
Yes.
And
So,
there's a big benefit to the employees themselves because they will be acquiring skills and moving up the
yes.
productivity and wage ladder.
Yes.
So,
and these are small amounts compared to a Narega, which is like 70,000 crores, or even Krishi Samman Nidhi, which is like 96,000 crores. This is not anywhere comparable to those numbers, at least start beginning years. I don't see it being
there's one other thing which is attractive about this is because these are future liabilities. So nothing needs to come out. So in fact, what it means is we are borrowing from the future, which makes sense because in the future, we'll have more resources, we will have had more growth, and we will be richer. So I want you to compare this to another scheme that has been talked about in the last few years, at least, the universal basic income, which proposes that a certain minimum amount will be transferred to everybody's account. In terms of numbers.
Yeah, so I'm, of course, most economists think that that's the best way to deal with the welfare transfers and all that. I'm not such a great fan of those schemes. The simple reason being, this is not going to boost productivity. So you raise this question of transferring. We are burdening the future generation for our current health or whatever. We are burdening future generation. This is justified only if we increase productivity. Let's say building infrastructure. I will not even ask ethical questions for why are we burdening the future generation, because future generation benefits from that infrastructure. So if we combine this transfer along with this liberalization of labor laws, which boosts productivity, this will enormously benefit future generation. Future generation will have so much income.
I like this idea a lot as well, because
so this
is
not
linked
unlikely
to
to do that.
Of jobs, it is linked to productivity increase rather than a mere transfer. And that to me is a game changer. That I think it's a very simple idea, but I think it's a really, really powerful idea because it's connected to jobs. It also addresses the issue, which I think was an insight that I learned from you, that in terms of targeting, it's the perfect targeting because you are making a payment to a provident fund. So it is going exactly to the type of people who would be inducted into the formal workforce. So on both these counts, it is a winner compared to an alternative scheme.
Yes. And it will reach out to large, as we have seen, 4-5 crore households in India is small, not small. 30 crore is the number of households, 15-20% of that. is not a small number. I think if advertised, marketed well, this can touch some 8-10 crore households. The burden may not be 20,000 crore, maybe 35,000 crore in that case, but I think it's still worth it. Because we spent 70,000 crore on Narega, and I have not seen any revolution in infrastructure creation at the rural, at rural level. Being Narega has operated like for 10 years now. We have spent like 4 lakh crores on that, and I haven't seen any magical change in productivity. Otherwise, rural productivity should have become significantly higher by now if this has created infrastructure. Although there are micro studies which have shown great benefits to households, I am not denying that UBI will benefit households. Of course, it will increase their income, it will increase their consumption, their healthcare expenditure. It will have benefits for sure. But the question is, I think this will have all those. Plus, this is going to be sustainable, and it will increase productivity in the long run.
So this is a great idea, but perhaps we can go a step further, which is perhaps we can reward those firms who are doing it more or better to incentivize this to happen at an even bigger scale. Is that possible?
I think this can be done, as you pointed out just now, that this is measurable. That's a great advantage of this scheme. So we can actually rank new firms based on number of or percentage of jobs or number of jobs they've created, and some of the benefits that have been extended to SMEs. Or, for example, we have this 15% tax for manufacturing firms these days. So the idea is all manufacturing firms create jobs. That may not be the purpose is to create jobs, but not all manufacturing firms may create jobs. But here we know these guys have created jobs. Why not give it to them? Say that
let's just reward creation of jobs without worrying about where it is coming from.
Yes, that's correct.
Because we can measure it accurately, it's very easy to target that. So a lower corporate tax rate of 15%, which was recently offered for new manufacturing firms, we can in fact offer it to any firms that are increasing the jobs as measured by increased PF contribution.
Yes. So we have to take care of duplicates and all those issues with Aadhaar linking and all. Otherwise, there could be fraud. But once that is figured out, I think this is one. The other thing is now there could be competition between states. States can announce schemes because states have land banks, and there is always issue of corruption. You have a lot of civil society movements going on. Politicians acquire lands because this land allocation process is not transparent. Now, creating jobs can be a number one criterion to give you land in a land bank, and there will not be any political opposition. As why will any opposition party oppose this idea that I'm giving the land to those who create maximum jobs? And
because the metric of job creation is there, you can give other incentives based on job creation. So I think that's an excellent idea as well. So I have to say, Prasanna, that this is such a simple but such an important idea that I'd like to give it a name. Can we call it Bhagwan-Prasanna Jobs Initiative?
That would be good. I think
we're going to call it BPJI, Bhagwan-Prasanna Jobs Initiative. So Bhagwan Prasanna hue ye sunke. We will call it. But we would love to hear from you. I think it's a very simple idea. It's a tractable idea. It's doable, and it offers many benefits over UBI. So let me just quickly summarize it. It is linked to job creation.
Yes.
The funds that are required will come in the future. So it's not so much of an outlay currently. And because it is linked to a metric that can be observed, provident funds, it can be targeted to the right place without worrying about leakage. And this would benefit not only the employers and employees who will build their skill and lead to the large productivity that India really needs to be able to emulate the big economies in the world. So I think it's a winner, and I hope we have a good discussion of it amongst the policymakers, the corporations, and the civil society. So thank you all for listening. Thank you, Prasanna, for this great insights.